Okay, so we're going to talk about the FRQ part of the test in particular, and then we're going to do some FRQing. And I think it's good to understand the test, because if you understand the test, like anytime you know what to expect, it lowers your anxiety. And so the more practice we have with that, the more comfortable you're going to feel, because you know what to expect and how to plan for it. So first of all, this is the way the FRQ has always worked in the past. So you had the multiple choice section is section 1, and then you have 90 minutes for the free response. Now, last year we did it digital and the whole thing was free response. So hard to say this year if we're going to go back to the pen and paper version, because we're pen and paper for SAT. So I can see that possibly we go back to the pen and paper version, or if we stick with that digital version, in which case, if your whole test is FRQ, you really want to understand FRQs. So in the pen and paper version, you have 10 minutes to read and plan. The digital version, it was like, just get started. And then you have an 80-minute free response. And this will be true either way, like pen and paper or digital. You have 2 long free response questions. A long free response question typically takes about 20 minutes. So I give you these times because that helps you know if you're spending enough time or if you're spending too much time, right? So it helps you kind of get an idea of how much you should write. You can do some practiced timed tests. The next 6 questions are considered short FRQs, and they take about 6 minutes each. And you're going to get exposed to a long FRQ today and a short FRQ. The short FRQs, I would say, are kind of like when you take a test in mini classes, not English, of course, and you have a short answer question that is about the extent of that. The long FRQs are like multifaceted. Okay, so if you have time left, you should always go back, review your question and answer. A lot of times, and I see this in some of the worksheets too, kids answer the question they think is being asked, not the question that's actually being asked, or like they're answering the question they want to be asked. So reread the question and then your answers, and make sure your answer is connected to what they're asking you. So make sure you're interpreting the question correctly. Read the question like 3 times before you even get started. So we're gonna look at an FRQ, and I want you to think about these 2 questions. So right now we're not answering it, we're just like, I didn't even teach you this content. So I just want you to think, what knowledge would you need in order to answer this question? And I'm also gonna ask you, what skills would you need to answer this question? So knowledge versus skills. So this should launch the FRQ for you. So I'm going to give you maybe 5 minutes to read this over and think about knowledge and skills. So now, what skills do you feel like you needed? So really for this question, it's an intimidating question. You're reading it and you're reading about things you've never seen, and you're like, I know nothing about this. But in fact, you barely needed to know anything about it, right? You just needed some skills. So like when I was first reading it, I thought you need to know about osmolarity, enzymes, evolution, amino acids, allele, frequencies. But in the end, I think what they asked me, I could figure out from the data they provided. So being able to interpret graphics, make predictions, look for trends. Those are all skills that you would need. Osmolarity has to do with how much solute is in a solution. So on the graph, they referred to salinity. So if you just kind of needed to recognize salinity as a factor of osmolarity. Okay, so the scoring guidelines. So this is how you would be scored for this. Every time there's a bold-faced word, that's a command, and that you're going to get points for. So from this, you didn't really need a lot of background knowledge. You could just interpret, like I could have given it to you today and you probably would have done fine. When we were together Tuesday, we were working on graphing, and I told you that you get a point for every part of that graph, right? So you would get a point for correctly plotted bar graph, and accurately represents the trend. So this one is on your, like you were able to map X and Y. Correct access labeling, that means that you labeled the independent variable on the X and the dependent variable on the Y, and you included scale and units. So like if you were mapping the LAP frequency, you would need to include percent. If you didn't include that percent, you would not get a point. And it's not about losing point, it's about earning points, okay? If you're doing temperature, like some of the graphs that we did this week, temperature, if you didn't say in parentheses Celsius degrees or whatever your unit was, you would not get a point. So make sure you're labeling your axes correctly. Scaling means that you have even increments. So you went 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. You didn't go 2, 4, 6, 20, 40, 60, right? You have an even scaling. And then for the description, they asked you to describe. So you were looking for an effect, right? So you're thinking cause, effect, cause and effect. So if you were able to recognize the relationship, basically, that was a point. Continuing this trend, you could predict the future, right? That's a point. The most likely effect of this on osmolarity. So this time you're looking like at the salinity, and this might include a little bit of like diffusion. We know that the salinity of a solution will cause water to move between compartments. So that might have been a little bit of content we needed. And then again, explain the difference between the allele frequencies. So you were looking at the frequencies and maybe giving an explanation as to why they're different, right? And then again, if this trend continues, predict to the future and give me a scientific reason why. Use data to support your conclusion. Was there a question? Voice, comment?
Oh, is this the 20-minute question or the 6-minute?
This was a 20-minute question.
Okay.
Yeah. So the 20-minute questions are usually divided into parts. So there's an A, B, C, D. They went all the way to J last year. G or J? G, maybe. Yeah, they went A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Because we normally would just do A, B, C, D, but they had multiple parts. So if you have one question prompt and then it's multiple pieces, A, B, C, D, that's your 20-minute question. One of these alone would be a short FRQ. So if they just gave you A or B, okay? So relax when you read those questions and try to ask, like, identify what are they asking you to do, because more of your points have to do with doing than they do have to do with spitting out information that you know. So during your reading period, you would typically want to read the question, identify what's being asked, read it again, make sure that you're interpreting the question correctly. Take time to come up with a brainstorming list of words. So if you were talking about evolution, you would talk about allele frequencies, you would talk about gene pools, like there's specific things you typically would talk about. So this link here takes you to Bozeman's flashcards, and I want you to come up with your own buzzwords first, but he has like a flashcard for every topic that we cover. So if you're doing FRQs and you read that it's about osmosis, you're going to think water potential, solute, concentration, diffusion, hypertonic, hypotonic, isotonic. Like you're just going to throw out all the words that relate to that topic. Go back, read the question again, cross out the words that aren't really relative to this particular question, okay? Like the readers are looking for those buzzwords. So what I want you to do, because we're on enzymes right now, you're going to do an FRQ today. What are some, after you identify that your FRQ is about enzymes, you're going to make a buzzword list. What words do you think you would include possibly in an FRQ about enzymes? What are keywords related to enzymes? So some of us are looking at structure. So we're talking about what makes them up, proteins, amino acids. Good. Some of us are looking at what kind of reactions they take place in, metabolic pathways, endergonic, exergonic. They're a catalyst, good. Substrate, definitely. Active site, so now we're getting into structure. Along with structure, you have allosteric sites. Along with regulation, you have inhibitors. Feedback inhibition, excellent. Metabolism, endergonic, exergonic. Ooh, and action potential. Competitive, non-competitive, denatured, the things that affect the enzyme, right? pH, temperature, salinity, yada, yada. Speed up reactions, catalyzing. Activation zone, probably you want to use active site for that. Can I share with you guys what everybody wrote? Yeah, I can. Oh, I'd have to go through everyone individually. I don't want to do that. Well, there's some answers. Okay, so that's a good splash. I think you guys hit conformational change, might be a word you throw out there that you guys don't have. Here's Bozeman's list. So this is what that set of cards has. So I don't think any of us hit cofactor or coenzyme. That might be something we add. You guys hit most everything else. How do you calculate reaction rate? If you were given a graph, rise over run, right? That's a math question. Change in Y over change in X, rise over run. You can do that. Okay, so here's some of those buzzwords and what they are asking of you. So discuss, talk about various aspects of a concept. So be able to talk about it. Somebody put that. Often covers the ideas of why or how. So whatever they're asking, why is it happening or how is it happening scientifically, not just to stay alive, right? Explain means to make something understandable. So I liked Monsi's where she said digestible. So think of explaining it to like a middle schooler, trying to make it understandable, talking about the pieces and parts. Justify, definitely proving, using evidence. They're going to give you data tables. They want information from their prompt. So when you go to justify something or support something, try to bring in examples from their question prompt. You were also asked identify, which I think is kind of like a list. And they usually will tell you how many. And they are going to stop. Like after, if they say list 2, they're going to stop reading after 2. They're not going to keep going. Predict, that's your cause and effect basically. So assume this trend is to continue, predict what's going to happen next. So identify what info is being requested, what commands are being asked of you, and then move on. Don't spend too much time on it. You can include drawings to enhance or replace your essay, but they must be labeled. They need a title, label, and refer to it in your answer. So like if you're drawing a cell, or in this case, you're drawing an enzyme and you want to talk about the active site, and so you draw it and point it out, you want to refer to that in your question as seen in the drawing below or something like that. So be clear on if they say list 2 things, identify 2 things, they're going to stop reading after that. So it doesn't matter, like don't just throw in a whole bunch and say, I hope 2 of those work, because they stop reading after 2. Make sure everything is labeled clearly. We learned digitally how we can make tables and graphs and insert them if we wanted. You can copy paste it. You can put it on a PDF by itself and pull it up. Or a Word doc, and you can insert that Word doc. You can do that, or you can draw and take pictures and put them up on there as well. So make sure you know what they're asking of you. Make sure you give that answer. Write incomplete sentences. It's not a short one-word answer. It's not, you know, abbreviated. You're writing in an essay, but it's not a formal essay. You don't need an intro. You don't need a conclusion. They know what the question is. A lot of essays start with repeating the question. That's a waste of your time. They know what they're asking, so just jump right into answering the question. So you start with 0 points and you just get positive points for doing things right, giving them things they're asking for. You don't lose points by saying something wrong. That's kind of cool. If we're doing this on paper, you would have to label it A, B, C, D. Digitally, it's already labeled for you, so that's not so important. So what they like is that you're able to connect biological concepts like metabolic pathways to a larger big idea. How that relates to evolution, something like that. That you're able to use science practices and skills, graphing, predicting, those are skills. Students must make claims and defend them. So this is claim, evidence, reasoning. What is your claim? What evidence in the question supports your claim? And then what's the scientific reasoning behind that? Why is this evidence for the claim? So now it's your turn. So this is your FRQ, and like I said, originally I was going to launch it right from here. You have an open window till 10 o'clock, and it's like, you have a long and 2 shorts, I think, so 20 to 30 minutes. So I thought if you were starting by 9:30, you would be good to be done at 10. I wanted you to watch 2 videos of enzymes that seem like that's your weakest point. So if you want to grab 2 of those videos, they probably take, what, 8 minutes each? It's about 16 minutes there. So watch a couple of the videos that you feel would strengthen you the best, and then hit the FRQ. And it should be, it's Enzymes FRQ is what it's called. It should be in your AP classroom.